Hello, guys. How's it going? Good afternoon. So, I really felt like taking a nap, but I decided I need to do something productive today. So, I'm going to do a little stream. Why not? So, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. And yeah, just casual, trying to stay awake sort of stream. Welcome, everyone. All right, let's start from the top. Will Dunham. Hi, can we please talk about a beginning guide to tracking a complete song? What is about the right time length a solid song should be, please? I don't know why that was hard for me to read. Um, I mean, we could do that. I don't know what experience level you have. It's sort of a beginner question, but it's so broad. I mean, I don't know what style of music you make, but like I like to put in about 24 hours of work from writing to mastering for a song, and that's like as the producer. So like if it's someone else's music and we're putting in that much time into a single song, you know, pre-production, making sure all the lyrics are good, everyone knows their parts, we do the tracking, you know, all that kind of stuff. Things are a little bit different if it's your own music, if it's electronic music, you know, there's a lot of factors in this, but I don't know. I think that's kind of the amount of time that it takes. Um, yeah. If you don't know anything about microphones and, you know, Reaper and audio interfaces, all that kind of stuff, then it'll probably take even longer. Let's move on from that one because it's kind of like too broad, I think. Way to set Reaper to stop the playhead when you hit the spacebar. Yes, we can do that. And not through the pause button either. Where's my button? All right, so in Reaper, transport, stop. So here's what I have. I have it on the key N, just because I don't want a play stop action as my default. So I'll show you what that custom action actually is. Move edit cursor to play cursor and stop. And then set play rate to 1 if that is something that I need. So the main action is move edit cursor to play cursor, and then the stop action will basically be where you hit stop. If you want that to work more like play and stop, then you might want to do a cycle action from the SWS cycle action editor. So that would be, I may actually have one already. Cycle, play, stop, and reset. That one's for reset MIDI. Yeah, well, this is an easy one. I can just adjust this. Going to So I'm not looking at the chat right now, but you guys can just put in your questions, and I will come back to that, and we'll try to work through one at a time. Move edit cursor to play cursor. I'm just going to insert this from the action list. So if the next, let me zoom in here. So if the next action is on, which is play, then we want to move the edit cursor to the play cursor and then stop. And that is the end of that condition. If the next, if play is turned off, then it's going to play. And so I'll just rename this. And hit apply. And ignore. Okay. So I'll hit play and then run this. And it moved the edit cursor to that spot and stopped. So I believe that's what you want. And then you could just take that play stop cycle, which is here, and assign it to the spacebar. All right, back to the chat. I want to stream Reaper into YouTube. What do I got to do? Okay, to stream on YouTube, I think you need 100 subscribers to unlock that ability. I'm using software called OBS for setting up my camera and everything that you can see. Looks like this. I'm using software called Loopback to choose which audio sources get sent to the feed. So right now it's pass-through, which is getting Reaper, but I have, there's other layouts you can use, like using Reaper as one of them, as a source directly. I'm doing this on Mac. It's different on Windows, so just keep that in mind. But and then the rest is in your YouTube dashboard. There's a press like go live, and then you'll see a preview. You connect OBS, you start streaming in OBS, you'll see the preview and the chat window, and then you hit go live, and then you're live. How much time do you spend improving your workflow compared to actual making content? I find that a lot of time on workflow and customization. Yeah, I definitely spend a lot of time on workflow, customization, that kind of stuff. Let's get back to camera. And but usually it comes from being stuck on something, doing actual work, and maybe not like a video, but like, if I'm mastering a song, if I'm tracking, something like that, there's some action that I need to do more than a couple times, then I'll just work on improving that so the next time it's more fluid. I'll have a toolbar button, I'll assign it to keyboard shortcut, put it on my Stream Deck, put it on my Reaper WRB, any of those things, just so that I don't need to remember all these complex steps. I think the way Reaper makes it really accessible to actually do these workflow hacks makes it doesn't feel as bad for me to like have to take a break from what I'm actually working on, because you can get back to it much quicker. Yeah, so like right now I don't have any big projects, so I'm not doing a whole lot. What I've been working on recently is just like, making tons of little changes to the Reaper theme, just partly so that I can learn it. And I think for me, constantly learning is part of the fun of it. And also because there's little things that I want to change. And I think it's interesting to be able to do that yourself, even if it looks bad in the end. I kind of like what I did recently on it. But yeah. Okay, so John Walker asked, do you still prefer 0 dB pan law? Yes, I do. It's the most predictable. So because I work with folders a lot, sometimes there's folders inside of folders. I don't want to have to worry about changing the pan law between each of the child tracks and the parent tracks. Because there's no like preference to have folder tracks as 0 and child tracks as like -3. The only time I will change a pan law specifically is with panning automation if it just doesn't sound right. But other than that, I leave it at 0. And for those that don't know, pan law is when you go to one of the tracks and you can override the default pan law or set that in project settings. So in project settings for advanced, it's pan law. -3 is very common, -6, -4.5 in different DAWs is used. Basically just turns down the tracks that are panned in the middle, and or maybe boost if they are on the left or right. 0 dB is the most predictable. Like there's no volume change between panning something center or left and right. There's a perceived volume change, but there's no actual volume change. And I think some people like to compensate for that perceived volume difference. But yeah, for me, I just leave it the way it is. If I pan something, it's usually not automated, and so I'm just adjusting with the fader anyways. All right. I've definitely talked about that in Q&As before. Have an issue with a string section on a track I'm working on that disappears or is greatly reduced in mono. Can't figure out how to solve it, why this happens. You know, it kind of depends on if it's like real strings or like a string recording, or if it's like a string patch on a keyboard. Often it's like fake mono to begin with, where, you know, it's either the same signal or it's just a sort of slightly tweaked version to sound wide, but when you listen to it in mono, then it disappears. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns with this question, so I would look at it by itself and see if it's actually mono to begin with, like fake mono. If that's the case, get rid of one side and then you know, have another synth string patch on the opposite side that's different, and then you're not going to have those mono issues. Starting with 2 mono sources, you won't have that sort of issue. But a lot of like arranger keyboards and things like that, they're not true stereo to begin with. But I could be wrong with that situation. Okay, Cog Beats. Back to the spacebar. Spacebar to play and stop audio playback globally, despite which window. Yeah, some plugin windows do block the spacebar. This one is not at the moment. I don't know. A lot of the T-Rex plugins for me block the spacebar. I bet they won't right now, but if you go to the action list and search for spacebar, double click here. Oops. One of my MIDI controllers went nuts there. Trying to send MIDI. Technical difficulties. Play, stop. Okay, as I was saying, there's this scope function here. So if you set it on global, then spacebar will work no matter what window is open. And global plus text fields means that it will ignore if you're actually typing somewhere. So, um, so with Spacebar, that's a pretty important one. You might not want to do that, the global plus text fields. But in normal should work in most cases, but global if not. The other thing is MIDI controllers don't care what window is in focus, and web remotes don't either. So this is kind of a new option here, kind of at the end of the Reaper 5 cycle that was added. And I don't know, I don't use it very much. I've got this one as a global shortcut, but I have very few others that I use globals for. And you can kind of see in the shortcut list if it has a G beside it, means it's global. But I don't think I have very many that are. So hopefully that answers your question. Way to transform MIDI control messages on the fly. So instead of sustain pedal going from full to off, it ramps. Where did that go? Ramps down. Yeah, so you would use the input effects chain of a track. So input effects is this button here. You would put in a MIDI JS plugin. So maybe CC, I forget what it's called. There's a bunch of different ones. Hopefully you can see this here. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them. So if it's like the pitch bend wheel MIDI control center or pitch wheel control center, that works really well. MIDI tool, maybe one that you want to put in there. And so with something like this, if it's on the input effects chain, that's going to be applied to the written MIDI. Otherwise, you'd put it at the top of the effects chain, so it's before any instruments, and then that would apply, but only in the monitoring. So either one. How can you change the color, size, font of the selection numbers, selection start, end, and length? Yeah, that's something in the theme that I haven't quite figured out yet. I'm sure it's something simple. I think you mean these numbers here. And they seem to depend on the size and scale of the other transport modules. Because I did find like where you can change the font size, but then it would just shrink again if I resize something else. So that's something that I need to work on. They're always too small for me, especially like they should be big. There's tons of room here, but because I've hidden so many other functions, but yeah. Question from Felix. Alternatives to OMF and AAF. So for those supporting those files, you need software called AA Translator, and that I've heard that works really well. The other option is getting XML format from Premiere or I think Resolve can export XML, and from there you can use an app called Vordio, and I have used that one. It's actually very good. I'll show you what that looks like here. You can convert a project from a Premiere project into a Reaper project. If there's changes in the original project, you can reconform it. So if the video editor updates, you can update your Reaper project as well. I'm also using it for the extract audio function. So if you have a video file, you can take out the audio or get a WAV file version of the audio in that, and replace audio can take the audio out of one video file and replace it with some other audio. And so all that stuff works really well. Could you inform us about the current situation of Reaper and Rearticulate? I haven't used that. I've been kind of watching it, but all the information about that is going to be on the forum. What do you think about the Ignite Amps Emissary as compared to the Neural DSP stuff? I don't have a lot of experience with this stuff. Mostly I use Amplitude and some of the free stuff like from Lepu, and I also have the Line 6 Helix. I think I probably have Emissary installed, but it's not my go-to. Yeah, I do. It's not my go-to though. I don't know, whatever works. I don't have like those amps are kind of made for like metal guitars, and all I have is a Telecaster, and so like I'm never happy with the results. For now, I'm just gonna stick with what I know. Solution to move my MIDI recordings to kick them to right before quantize. Move my MIDI recordings to before quantize. Not completely sure what you mean there. It could be that your input offset is incorrect, which is in the recording preferences. So in here, there's the audio driver reported latency. You can manually adjust this. And so I have a video on this. You'll have to check my channel for how to do that. I don't want to get into that right now. But yeah, if you're recording something and you find that it's always a little bit late or early, then it could be that the driver says it's one thing, but it's actually a different value for the offset, and Reaper compensates for what the driver says. So you can add in additional or put in a negative number here, and that's just going to change the position of that recording. And so without quantizing your MIDI performance, that could be one of the factors there. If you want to quantize, there is input quantize. If you go to it's one of these options here, I always lose track of it. I have a button on my main toolbar for track recording settings, and there is quantize MIDI recording here. And this is actually non-destructive. So if you record something and the quantize messes up, it moves it to the wrong way, you can undo that in the MIDI editor. Pretty cool. So Kevin says, going back to the string sound, MIDI instrument panned left and right, that's playing a MIDI file I wrote. Big sound in stereo, not in mono. Are they separate? Is it like, it said it's strings, so is like violins on the left, violas on the right? Because that should collapse to mono pretty well. But if it's like the same instrument patch on the left and the duplicate on the right, then it's going to disappear in mono, or drop 6 dB in mono. Um, got lost. I lost track of where I was in the chat here. Is it possible to have a track armed but not actually record during recording? Instant constant tuner access. Yeah. And I saw someone else had that answer there. It's record disable. So we just take a track, right click on the record arm button, and you'll see all the options for recording. And so we want to have this on record disable input monitoring only. So you do this, and then you can monitor that. You can have your guitar tuner plugin on there, and it's always available, and you don't need to worry about recording onto that track. Craval asks, is Melodyne still acting weird with others or just me? I'm not using it that much, so I'm not sure, but I have definitely been seeing other users talking about some issues with that. I think on the forum today, there was one of the Reaper devs that said that they're working with Melodyne to get something fixed. There was just a discovery in the past day or two. Where in Reaper can you find the loudness meter when mastering? Okay, well, Reaper doesn't really have a loudness meter, but there are tons of third-party ones. On the master track, there is RMS metering, if you enable that. So peak and RMS, peak only or RMS only. RMS is kind of an older way of measuring loudness. These days we use LUFS. There's a free utility for this called, well, there's a lot of different ones. I don't have it in this folder. Ulean Loudness Meter is a very good free one. So this is at about -20 integrated. So I could actually bump this up by another 6 dB, probably. The actual loudness range is quite low, only 2 dB between the quiet and the loud. So, you know, maybe reconsider. It's actually arrangement issues more than anything. But yeah, this is a free plugin. It's great. You can put it on your master track, or you can put it in the monitoring effects chain, which is in the view menu and monitoring effects. And so I have a bunch of other metering plugins like Dunno Meter from Meter Plugs. What else do I have? Yeah, so I have the Ulean plugin in here, Dunno Meter. There's the Tone Boosters EBU Compact, which is just another kind of compact VU meter. So integrated level here, dynamic range, short-term loudness. So everything you need right there. And that one, I mean, this is the demo, but it does everything you need. Let's move on from that. More videos about JS plugins. Yeah, okay, I'll do it. I don't use them a ton, but yeah, I do need to come back to those because there's a lot of really good ones. A lot of people in the community making good ones recently, and there's just not a lot of documentation about those. So yeah. How do I set up Reaper so it organizes all my files, renders, recordings automatically in the parent folder with each project having its own folder? I did a video on that. What was it called? It was something like the defaults are all wrong. Something like that. Let me search for a sec. Um, it's called Essential File Management in Reaper, and um, yeah, I go through all that, so I'm not going to go through it again here. What else do we have? Do you use tape saturation plugins? What do you think of it? Is it mandatory to have one? I have a bunch. I have um, the tone boosters one is what I use the most, which is probably not like the best option these days because there's so many. But I do really like it. Tone boosters Real Bus. No, older version. Real Bus 3. So I use this usually on the master and on my folder tracks, different presets. I'm just really simple, and it just tends to add a lot of kind of character to the recording. So I like that one. I have one of the IK multimedia ones. I always forget which one. I think it's the 440. No, the 80. Yeah. Which is the Studer style. Again, a very, very cool one. And I don't know. I think I have another, but I can't think of what it is now. Is there one? There's no tape one in Isotope. Is there? There is. There's Ozone 8. I have Ozone 8 and 9, and there's tape in there, but I haven't really used that one at all. So the Tone Boosters one is the one I use the most. Someone asking what DAW do I like the best? I think that's going to be obvious. Come on. Obviously. How do you map an action with a specific CC value on a control surface? You can choose which CC, but not like a specific number, as far as I know. For something more complex, sometimes you need to use the relearn plugin. Where is that? So I've shown this in a video once before, or twice before, but this is kind of a third-party MIDI control surface mapping thing. So I don't really remember how to use this. Let's take doc. Add mapping, learn source. No, learn target. No, there. Learn target, and then learn source, and I'll just grab something from my MIDI controller. Probably not going to work without a MIDI input. I don't remember how this works, but you can adjust the range in here, and that's kind of the main thing that you were looking for. having a minimum and maximum value for your MIDI. So I do have a tutorial on this for setting up sends. I think it was controlling sends through a MIDI controller. I don't remember what the video is called, but if you search my channel for Relearn, REALEARN, then you'll find it. Know of any analogs of Manly Voxbox or Summit Audio, Grand Channel, or TubeTech among JS plugins? No, I don't think there's anything like that. There are some sort of analog-esque plugins, but they're all pretty simple interfaces and everything. I mean, if you want those plugins, you should buy those plugins because that's going to get you what you're looking for. And if you don't get those, then you'll still be thinking that you don't have the real thing. So that's how I always feel with those things. A long time ago, you talked about a gain reduction meter plugin in Reaper. Love to see some about that. Yeah. I wish I understood it better. I've forgotten everything I know about that at this point. Yeah, I don't want to get into that. Sorry. This question: Why do some of my subdirectories have thousands of items? I do a lot of takes sometimes while wondering why my files are multiplied upon saving somehow. Okay, so that sounds like there's probably the peak files not put into a dedicated folder. So the peak, every file you record or import into your project is going to have a peak file. So just doing things like browsing your sample library through Reaper's Media Explorer will put a peak file in the same location, and that gets really cluttered. So to avoid that, you go to the preferences and paths, and you check this box, store all peak caches in alternative path, and you choose a path. So that's for me. I've got a shortcut on my desktop, and the repeaks folder is here, and everything I record or audition or import, this is just like the visual waveform, and I have this set up so that it clears this folder every I think 10 days, and so this folder is only 59 megabytes, and it's only in one spot instead of all over the place. Again, this is something that's in my file management essentials video, so check that out for more details. Why do people render a project then master the rendered file? Wouldn't it make sense to master it right in the master track bus after mixing and then render the final project? It makes sense if you're doing just one song, and there's no reference to the outside world. But if you are mastering an album or any more than one song, you typically want to finish the mixing process, export that as a WAV file, start a new project just for mastering, and then you approach it in a different way. You think about the project in a different way, and you can more easily manage things like CPU. Like mastering plugins take a lot of your CPU, so just doing the mix might not leave you any room to do the mastering. You could also have songs that come before and after, and those influence the things you do in mastering that song. So there's lots of reasons for that. I think we had a podcast episode about that. If you guys didn't know, I do a podcast with Ian Shepherd called the Mastering Show Podcast, and um, I wish we had a list of all the episodes here, but there's one we did about this, like why not master on the mix bus. Um, I don't even know. Again, search for mastering because it's going to be in every title. But if you go to our SoundCloud, you'll probably see the list there. So here's the playlist. I think that it might be this one, the one called Not Mastering. I know it's one of these episodes that we did it. Um, I'm seeing some stuff that I'm not sure about, like if it's to me or to another user in chat, but it's a little hard to follow. Michael says, can open 500 samples in Bitwig with the Nextar Impact 61 keyboard. How can you do that with a Reaper? Never works. I mean, I don't know. You'd have to put the samples in a sampler, and Reaper sampler does one at a time, basically. Something like Contact would be a good option for that, or so many other options. But yeah, not really clear what the goal is or where the problem is, actually. It's possible to use Reaper as SoundForge or Ableton Live, where you can measure the ADSR of a signal. Measure. Don't know what that means. If you want to email me, like an example of that, then I'll follow this up by email. Where would you go to acquire a library of traditional sounds, good quality, and reasonable price? The Contact default library is pretty good. Reasonable price, debatable. I don't know. My hair is on point. It's not. It's super long right now. I hate it. Anything on the horizon to assist with live performance? Don't know. I'm not a Reaper dev. Playtime is one good option. Hardware looper pedal is another good option. Do I use LBX stripper, and if so, for what? I've wanted to. I kind of built one layout, but never really got to use it very well because it doesn't, like, it just looks broken on my screen. Like, I cannot see this text here at all. Oh, I guess you guys want to see this as well. I can't see the text here at all. It's tiny. So, but it looks okay on my second monitor, which just means that I can't record a video on it. So Kind of annoying. It doesn't seem to work with my Mac, but it's very interesting software. Uh, have used the InPhase plugin. I think it's the Waves one. How do you set it up? It's probably set up similar to a sidechain compressor where it has a source signal on input 1 and 2 and a sidechain signal or some reference signal in 3 and 4. So you use the VST3 version and then send your reference into 3 and 4. Videos with 2 audio tracks, how to open in Reaper. Reaper is only going to use the first audio source. So you have to extract the other channels of audio. I think Vordio will do that, or some other way of doing it, but Reaper ignores the other channels for some reason. Okay, I think we're pretty much caught up. Oh, someone mentioned Expand 2. Philip mentions Expand 2. Yeah, that's another plugin that has saved me a bunch of times. Just when I didn't have a good sample library, detailed recording of something, Expand tends to have it. And it's better than General MIDI. And it's better than nothing. It's yeah. Like I said, it saved me a bunch of times. And yeah, Labs from Spitfire is another good recommendation. Um, I would say it's more traditional instruments played in a different way, or it's like more for sound design. There's some cool stuff in there. I should check if they've actually updated the plugin because it was pretty glitchy for me last time. Like when I made a video on it, I don't think I've come back to it since then. Can you recommend REAQ settings on Mixbus for mixing at low volumes? I don't really. I wouldn't use it in that way. Might be cool to show some new users free item positioning. Yeah, I don't know. I said at the beginning of the stream that I'm like trying to avoid having a nap, but yeah, I don't use free item positioning that much, but it is cool, and the only possible way to solve certain problems that are very rare. So, is it possible to tweak the track faders to be stepped, like in TDR Novas or TDR's plugins, when you move quickly from one to do? Tweak the plugins to be stepped. No, I don't think so. You can move them slowly by holding command, but yeah, but not in 1 dB increments. If that's something you want, you're more likely to get that through nudge volume, I think it is. Nudge. Yeah, these actions here, nudge selected tracks volume down by 1 and 2 dB. So that's the only way to do stepped things, I think. All right, guys. I think we're winding down. I'm going to go have some lunch. Thank you guys so much for joining me on the stream today. It was fun. Hope you had a good time, and hopefully I answered your questions. Feel free to leave a comment on the channel or email me or post a message on the Facebook group, something like that. If there's anything bothering you, anything that you desperately need answered. Okay, guys. Where am I down? Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in another video next week, probably.